My treasures are laid up somewhere beyond the blue. The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh Lord, you know I have no friend like you. If heaven's not my home, then Lord, what will I do? The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. They're all expecting me, and that's one thing I know. My Savior pardoned me, and now I onward go. I know He'll take me through, though I am weak and poor, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh Lord, you know I have no friend like you. If heaven's not my home, then Lord, what will I do? The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Just up in glory land we'll live eternally. The saints on every hand are shouting victory. Their song of sweetest praise drifts back from heaven's shore, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh Lord, you know I have no friend like you. If heaven's not my home, then Lord, what will I do? The angels beckon me from heaven's open door, and I can't feel at home in this world anymore. Oh Lord my God.
Right. We left off thinking, we started looking at Saul coming out of the Judges. It's a fascinating study, as well as with David, that we'll note a little bit later. And we talked about coming out of the Judges. It was a divided, it was a disjointed, ununified nation. They were each protecting their own little pockets of the promised land. They were not united. They were not being faithful to God. They had 400 years of that cycle of that faithfulness, and then they were not, and then God would raise up the enemies, and they would be oppressed, and then they'd cry out, and He'd raise up these judges, these military deliverers, Samson being the last one. Samuel the prophet now is the transition figure that is a prophet, also priest, and kind of serves as a pseudo-king, if you will, a judge, a leader over God's people. But his time is coming to an end. You remember they asked for a king. And we'll come back to that once again with one of the stories that we'll note here with Nahash, the Ammonite king, who besieges Jabesh Gilead here in Israel. And they specifically mentioned they were afraid of a king like him. And so they asked for a king, and we said it wasn't so much that they asked for a king, God put it in the law. When you have a king, right? But the problem was they rejected the rule of leadership of God. They didn't want His leadership. And that's why when Samuel is kind of crushed or disappointed by this, God tells Samuel, they've not rejected you, they've rejected me. And so, thus this will begin Israel's first king. And of course, that will be King Saul. And we talked about that, kind of setting up that a little bit last time. The story of Saul in Samuel is to be interpreted or understood in the context of why this is being recorded. They are showing, Samuel, if he's the author, we believe, is showing what's happened and how they needed to be united. And ultimately, God would reject, of course, Saul, and it would be David who would be the king that would be a man after God's own heart and would be the one who would begin leading them in the way that would kind of really expand the kingdom. And so there's a contrast between Saul and David. You have to see that in the text. And so we began looking at how Saul began, and we talked about this pattern. Well, I didn't put it up there, but the three parts. You've got the kind of making of the king. You've got the anointing. That's always private. Then you've got a demonstration, something that the king will do that will show the people he's God's anointed spirit, God's hand is upon him, and they can rally and get behind him. And then there's a coronation, a public yes. That's how it will need to be going forward. That's not how it happens with Saul, unfortunately. He's anointed, and then you remember we talked about Saul will give him instructions, or Samuel will give him very detailed instructions. These signs are to be fulfilled on this day. You're to go here, and you're to do this, and you're to, very specific. A man, will arrive, and so on, and you go to this place, and as you approach this group of people, we'll be carrying this goat, and so on, and they'll have instruments that they'll be playing in this town. I mean, you get very detailed. And the Spirit of the Lord will come upon you, and you'll begin to prophesy, and so on. And then the key verse we said there in 1 Samuel 10 is you rally the people, and the way you rally the people is a military victory. And do this, demonstrate this. This is what, take advantage of this. And yet Saul will not do that. He will go back to basically after they remember looking for the donkeys. Remember, we did a contrast for his father's animals. We did a contrast already between David and Saul. Saul, after looking for a little while, says, let's go back. Dad will get worried about us. It really seems to be probably more of an excuse. Even his servant says, hey, let's not give up just yet. There's a prophet of God here. Let's see if he can help us. And so they agree to do that, and that's what introduces Saul, to Samuel. But David, when he loses his animal, that's his father's. Remember, later on, he tells Saul with Goliath, the story of Goliath, that I went after and saved and rescued the lamb from the lion and the bear. I went in and risked my life. Where Saul's kind of like, whatever. It's not my animal. It's just, so you already see a contrast there. And then you see this we saw when they do make him king. Because he doesn't demonstrate that he is the anointed, he just kind of goes back and hides, kind of just, even when his uncle asks him, hey, how'd it go? You met Saul, I heard you met Samuel the prophet. What'd he say? Saul doesn't say anything. He says, he just told me that the animals have been found. And he doesn't, and so they have to go through this whole process where they end up casting lots to find, which of the tribes that, and it's going to fall on the tribe of Benjamin. They go clan by clan, and finally it's the son of Kish was taken. And remember there in verse 21, when they looked for him, he was not to be found. They inquired further of the Lord, has the man come here yet? The Lord said, yes, he has hidden himself among the supplies or the baggage. And we talked about that and how a lot of times this was presented try to put Saul in a good light, because we want to try to find some good things here. We say, well, we said earlier he's concerned about his dad and thinking about his dad. I think he's thinking about himself, is what I think the text and the context will show in Saul's life. And then here, well, he's humble. He's not, he's not wanting to be king. And so, it's humble leaders, that's a good thing. And no, that's not here what the text is showing. And remember, we contrasted with David, the same word is used. When David shows up and he hears Goliath defying God's army, it says he leaves his supplies, same word, and he goes to what? To fight Goliath. He goes to his calling, if you will. When Saul is called, he hides with the baggage, with the supplies. And so we see that contrast in this between these two here. When Saul's supposed to be receiving his kingship, he refused and he went and hid. David leaves it, bags, and he goes to the front line. He demonstrates it publicly. And of course, wow, what a demonstration he does with Goliath. And so you see, basically you see a picture of cowardly. And that's going to be a big part of Saul's DNA, unfortunately. Inwardly, because again, outwardly he looked the what? He looked the part, but inwardly he's not. And so, contrast again with David, who is the youngest of his family, of his father's, Jesse's sons. Later on, and Samuel will go and see Jesse's boys. Jesse doesn't even bring David in. He's out in the field, and even Samuel gets caught up in the physical, looking at Jesse's sons and says, oh, this is surely the Lord's anointed. No, man looks on the outward, I look on the inward. And so we see that contrast here. Okay, here in chapter 11, we have this account of, and we're not going through every little thing here, I just want to stay. We have this account of Saul rescuing the city of Jabesh Gilead. So let's go back to our map. Let me see here. So we've got Jabesh Gilead here, kind of on the western side of Israel. And so here he's going to, here's the tribe of Benjamin. Gibeah is where Saul would reside. Jerusalem's down, just down from there. Ephraim here up in the north, or kind of in the middle. But we're going to be over here. Jabesh Gilead is going to be besieged by Nahash, the Ammonite king. And so we're going to see Jabesh Gilead. Do you remember in the end of Judges? Do you remember they were one of the cities that didn't show up? Remember that terrible story with Micah and his concubine getting chopped up in 12 pieces and sent throughout? And remember what that starts, that civil war? And they're all going to rally and turn against Benjamin, right? And remember they call and they take note of who didn't show up, and Jabesh Gilead. And so they go and they slaughter, right? And here they're going to, and they're going to, they made vows that they would not give the tribe of Benjamin. They wouldn't give their daughters. And so, but then they realize, hey, we've basically wiped out the tribe of Benjamin. We need to repopulate it, but we can't give our daughters to the, to some of the men that are left. And so they go and they kidnap the women of Jabesh Gilead. And so anyway, so Jabesh Gilead will help repopulate the tribe of Benjamin. And you also have to wonder how that factors into Saul, because he's from the tribe of Benjamin. And so just an interesting note there. Chapter 11, it's interesting here. Culturally, they just thought they did things differently than we do. They're going to besiege this city, And they're going to the people of the city. The Nahash, the Ammonite leader, says that I'll make a treaty with you on one condition, that I get to gouge out your right eye. I mean, that sounds pretty weird to us, and bring disgrace on Israel, of course. The elders agree to that, but then they ask us, give us 7 days so we can send out messengers throughout Israel. If no one comes to rescue us, we'll surrender. Again, seems a little odd that the Ammonite king would say, okay, I'll wait 7 days to see who shows up. If anyone does, I'll fight. It just seems a little odd, but we're removed from this context, culture. And so this is what, and so the report will come, messengers will come, and Saul will rise up here and will do this. When Saul heard the words, the Spirit of God came upon him powerfully. He burned with anger. Notice here, he took a pair of oxen, cut it into pieces, and sent the pieces. What is it about cutting up? What is going on here? But I will note that doesn't mean this is the approved of God. Just because the Spirit of God came upon him, how Saul often reacts and responds is not always. And so you have this once again, and so he will lead the people to save the city, and they will defeat them, and so you see that. You read the story how they divide into 3 divisions, and they basically come in and they slaughter them in the middle of the day, and those who were survived were scattered so that no 2 of them were left together. Then you find an interesting story that follows here, where the people are going to kind of finally, now here's a demonstration, we think, yeah, and so the people are going to kind of rally behind Saul. So they're going to come to him and say, you're our leader, but there's going to be some people who are also going to say, hey, who was this Saul guy? The people said to Samuel, who was it that asked, shall Saul reign over us? Turn these men over to us so that we may put them to death. But Saul said, no one will be put to death today, for this day the Lord has rescued Israel. So here we have, this is the apex of Saul. This is the best that we see of Saul in this story. And it all goes downhill from here. Chapter 12 is interesting. Samuel gives a farewell speech. That's often, you find that in the Bible. Moses, Joshua, Jesus gives his last kind of discourse in the upper room. When you read Samuel's speech, you see a common theme that you find in these speeches like Deuteronomy and Joshua. You got to choose people between 2 ways. The blessings of God, if you are obedient, or the curses of God. You find that same language here that Samuel will give in this passage. And again, you find it throughout Deuteronomy, Joshua, and so on, where don't forget the Lord. He'll bless you. You'll prosper. Don't be afraid. Don't do evil in His eyes. Don't worship idols, and so on. And that's what Samuel gives him there. Yes, go ahead, Ivana.
And this is all to teach them a lesson.
Yeah, sure.
Because God knew ahead of time what Saul was going to be like when He chose him.
Yeah, sure.
And He knew that they had asked for a king like the countries around him.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's what you're going to get.
Yeah.
And so this was all of this was to teach them a lesson.
Yeah. And we know that they were going to get they were going to have in their history going forward. They were going to have, unfortunately, a number of kings who would lead them astray. They'd have some good ones, but they'd have a lot of bad ones. And so, absolutely. So it's just kind of interesting here, Samuel's speech that we find. Okay, and that sets up chapter 13 and 14 here. These are kind of key chapters. I'm sorry. I thought someone. Okay, so Saul was 30 years old when he became king, and I told you each of the kings, Saul, David, Solomon, reigned 40 years, the first 3 kings of Israel. So it's kind of easy to remember here. And so they come here and notice Jonathan attacked the Philistine outpost. That's something Saul should have done, but Jonathan is the one doing it. The Philistines heard about it. Then Saul had the trumpet blown throughout the land and said, "Let the Hebrews hear." So all Israel heard the news. Saul has attacked the Philistine outpost, and now Israel has become obnoxious to the Philistines, and the people were summoned to join Saul at Gilgal. So you have this, the Philistines are their arch enemy. They are Achilles' heel. They are the ones who are, at the time, advanced militarily. They're mighty, they're powerful. And so this is going to be Israel's real rival, is the Philistines. And so the call comes out to fight and to go to Gilgal. And so the Philistines assemble their mighty, powerful army, and you read about that in verse 5. And when Israel saw that, their situation was critical and their army was hard pressed. They hid in caves, thickets among the rocks and pits, and so they see the mighty force of the Philistines. Some of the Hebrews crossed the Jordan to the land of Gad and Gilgad. Saul remained at Gilgal, and all the troops with him were quaking with fear. You'll see this several times later on with the story of David and Goliath. You remember they were, when they heard Goliath and saw him. He waited 7 days. Look at that. We see that back in chapter 10 when Saul was anointed, remember, and was given those instructions. He was told to do all this and go to Gilgal, and I will come down and sacrifice, but you must wait 7 days until I come. So we've seen that instruction already previously, and now we see it that Saul remains at Gilgal, and he waits 7 days, the time set by Samuel. But look at what does verse 8 say of chapter 13. Samuel did not show up. He did not come. He was delayed. And the response of the people, and Saul's men began to scatter. I mean, they've been waiting 7 days. They see the army of the Philistines. They know they're powerful. Some of them are getting scared. The text tells us they were. Some of them are going to start bolting. Some of them are going to leave. They're going to lose their rank. Their army is going to start breaking apart. And so Saul sees that, and so he said there in verse 9, "Bring me the burnt offering and the fellowship rams." And Saul offered up the burnt offering. And verse 10, just as he finished making the offering. Now I got to tell you, Samuel is always showing up at these kind of moments. You just read Samuel, and this is several times where he just shows up at the right time, the bad time for Saul, if you will. But I don't know if Samuel was, I don't even know if Samuel was waiting for this to happen. I don't know. It's day 4. I got to wait a few more days. Saul's going to get antsy. I'm not sure here. But nonetheless, just as he's making the offering, Samuel arrived. And Saul went out to greet him. And the old prophet, the old man, right? He's dying. Remember, they've already said, you're not going to live much longer. You can't lead us. Your sons are no good. He's already given his farewell retirement speech, so to speak. He's got a little more in the tank, but I'm saying and so he says, "What have you done?" Samuel asked. Saul replied, when I saw that the men were scattering, and look at this, and you did not come at the set time. Your fault. This is you doing. And that the Philistines were assembling. I thought, my. Now the Philistines will come down against me at Gilgal, and I have not sought the Lord's favor. So I felt, keyword, compelled. This was something he felt, that his impulse was to do this and to offer the burnt offering. Now, you hear this, and we might be tempted to be in Saul's corner at least a little bit. He's the new king. He hadn't started out so great. He was hiding in the supply room, and then they bring him up, and all of this. He has a good victory initially. Now the people kind of recognize him with the demonstration of what he's done. Some of the men were saying bad things about him. Who is this guy that's going to lead us? And, that some of them wanted to kill him. And Saul said, no, this is the Lord's victory. This is the Lord's day. We're not going to put anybody to death. Now they're assembling against the Philistine army, the mighty Philistines, and they're ready to make a sacrifice and seek God's favor, but Samuel the prophet is delayed. The people get scared. They're going to start scattering. We can be sympathetic here to Saul. It's easy to kind of see things through his perspective. But that's not how God saw it. There are some excuses that have validity to them. Now, there are some excuses that have no validity, right? The dog ate my homework. Oh, well, that's just a lie. That's just you can make all kinds. But then there are excuses that are reasonable. Do you remember Jesus one time when he talked about people who wanted to follow him? Let me first bury my father. Let me take care of some business. Let me get married. They sound perfectly fine and legitimate, and by itself, of course they are, to go and... But they were still excuses to put off what they already knew they should have been doing in their commitment. And so there are some excuses that, even though they might be legitimate in the sense that they're not just flat out lie, or they can be couched in cowardliness. They can be couched in a lack of faith. They can be, excuses can be wrapped around stuff like that, can't they? Well, yeah, absolutely. Yes, right. But again, it's the people are getting antsy, and they might start leaving, and we could be defeated, and I could lose the army, and therefore we could lose the war. And Saul can start making all these, I need to do this, right? And we can't do that.
My version said, so I forced myself.
I forced myself, that's right. Yeah, which is still a justification of his actions that he knew he shouldn't have done. He's doing something he knows. This is not an accident, kind of a, we say, not secret sin, unintentional, kind of when we, he knows this, and he knows he shouldn't, but, he's got what he thinks is at least some legitimate reasons why, and maybe God will accept it. And it sounds good. And you've been in those situations where maybe you've worked with someone or your kids, and they tell you a perfectly good reason. Well, here's why that I did this. And let me tell you. And blah, and then this, and then that. And the boss or the parent is listening to that, and they say, I don't care. I don't care one bit about what you just told me. You still know that you never... Maybe a person on a job site, I don't care if this is happening, we never do that, right? Well, you don't understand what was, and it's that same thing here, that Samuel doesn't take it, God doesn't take it, because it indicated, his heart. And so Samuel says, you've done a foolish thing. You have not kept the command of the Lord your God gave you. If you had, he would have established your kingdom forever, for Israel, for all time. But now your kingdom will not endure. That is, it's not going to endure beyond your immediate line of your children, beyond you. Your kingdom will not endure. The Lord has sought a man after his own heart and appointed him ruler of his people, because you have not kept the Lord's command. Then Samuel left Gilgal and went up to Gibeah in Benjamin, and Saul counted the men who were with him. They numbered about 600. And so you have this basic rejection of Saul's line of being the king, his family, because of this lack of his lack of obedience to God, and so, you know, anytime sin happens, often it's easy to place the what? Blame on others. I mean, the first sin in the Bible, right? I mean, you kind of see this woman you gave me, right? I mean, you know, we see this. You see this throughout. A lot of this goes back, this blaming, and this is, you know, this is what he says here. Your line is going to end, and so, you know, this is tough, right? It is tough.
I find kind of sad because Jonathan was a much better person than Saul.
Yeah.
I mean, Jonathan
Yeah.
was loyal to David. If he had lived, he had pledged his loyalty to David
Absolutely.
as king.
Yeah. I mean, absolutely. And we're going to see a Jonathan story here in just a moment in the next chapter. Yeah, I mean, but, you know, God, it's often the heart behind, that's really the key. The Lord wants us to keep his commandments, but he wants us to keep them for the right reason and from the heart, and because it says more about ultimately what we believe about God and think about God. And most of God's commandments are, I mean, when it's hard to keep them, that's when the real test of the commandment. I mean, anybody can ask somebody to do something, and if they want to do it, that's really not a command, right? I'd like for you to go on an all-expense trip to Hawaii, right? I mean, I command you to get on a plane and to whatever. Well, I mean, but a command is always challenging when it's hard, when it's not easy, when it's not what we want to do. And that's when our heart is revealed. And Saul is, he's being revealed, he's being exposed through and through here. And yes, David will sin, but what's the contrast again with David when it comes to sin? Let's go to Nathan the prophet, comes to David after Bathsheba, remember? And tells him the story about the rich man with the little, took from the poor man with the little ewe lamb that was like his pet and had that lamb killed to feed the rich man. David is outraged. The man that done this will die. And Nathan says, you're the what? You're the man. You had all this and you took. And what's David's response? I have sinned, is what he says. And you see it. You see the contrast. Big difference. Big difference. We're to see these stories in contrast to each other. And so you see that here in this regard. Let me quickly here look at chapter 14 real quick. We're not going to be able to get to 15, which is the critical moment in Saul's. I mean, this is the first critical moment, but after chapter 15, it's over for Saul with the Amalekites. But chapter 14, now a detachment of the Philistines had gone out, and Jonathan, one son of Saul, said to his armor bearer, "Come, let's go over to the Philistine outpost." Which Saul should have done similar, but we've seen. But he says, let's go over there. But he did not tell his father. And so Saul here is staying, and this whole scene is Jonathan and his armor bearer is going to go, and he uses this, let us go to the outpost of those uncircumcised men. Look here, verse 6. Perhaps the Lord will act in our behalf. When did that language, I mean, Saul had a little bit. The Lord's given us his favor. We want to, but I mean, when did you ever really see that much at the heart of Saul? You don't see that. But Jonathan, as Kathy pointed out, he has that. Perhaps the Lord will act in our behalf. Nothing can hinder the Lord from saving, whether by many or by few. Now that's like Joshua and Caleb faith, right? Now we see the faith of Jonathan. And do all that you have in mind, his armor bearer said. Go ahead, I'm with you, heart and soul. And so you have this great story of Jonathan who will come and take on this outpost. What will happen is, as a result of this attack, they killed 20 men, and this will set up a fight, obviously, between the Israelites and the Philistines. And so that'll set up, that'll bring then Saul into the story. And so, you read the rest of the chapter here, where this is going to set up this battle between the Israelites and the Philistines. It also sets up, Saul is going to make a very foolish vow. Saul is going to make up a stupid rule in this passage. He's going to say, no one will eat or drink until we win the battle. And if they do, they'll be put to death. Now, first of all, it's a stupid rule. How can men be strong if they're not eating? Okay, I know enough. I've heard enough about like any place, because I've been places where the food is important. If you're working all day, certainly if you're in the military, you got to feed them. They're hungry, and they're out fighting. They're out working, and so how can they be strong? So it's really a stupid rule, and Jonathan doesn't even know about it. And basically, word is going to get back that it was Jonathan. You skip down in verse 41. The priests are going to say, "Hey, Jonathan." Basically, he saw some honey and he ate it, and so that sets up. His father kind of has to. So you look down here. Saul said, shall I go down and pursue the Philistines? Will you give him into the hands, Israel's hands? But God did not answer. So Saul said, come here, all of you leaders of the army, and let us find out what sin has been committed today. As surely as the Lord who rescued Israel lives, even if the guilt lies with my son Jonathan, he must die. But no one of them said a word. Saul then said to all the Israelites, you stand over there. I and Jonathan, my son, will stand over here. Do what seems best to you, they replied. Then Saul prayed to the Lord, the God of Israel, why have you not answered your servant today? If the fault is in me or my son Jonathan, respond. But if the men of Israel are at fault, respond. Again, Jonathan and Saul were taken by lot, and the men were cleared. Saul said, cast the lots between me and Jonathan. They cast lots, to believe that God will show, will control that. And Jonathan was taken. And Saul said to Jonathan, verse 43, tell me what you've done. So Jonathan told him, I tasted a little honey with the end of my staff. And look at Jonathan. Now I must die. He's willing to take responsibility. Unlike his father, when his father sinned earlier and pretty much blamed the prophet, Samuel, you're the one who didn't show up. Jonathan says, hey, I did it. I'll die. And Saul said, may God deal with me, be it ever so severely, if you don't die. So he's, hey, son, you're gone. But look here, verse 45. But the men said to Saul, should Jonathan die, who has brought about this great deliverance in Israel? Never. As surely as the Lord lives, not a hair of his head will fall to the ground, for he did this today with God's help. So the men rescued Jonathan, and he was not put to death. And so even in this story with this victory, Jonathan gets the credit. Jonathan gets the glory. I mean, God does, but Jonathan gets the acknowledgement. And so you see Saul here, unfortunately, the people they don't listen to him. They don't follow him. They don't want to put him to death, Jonathan to death. And they come to his defense. And so it's an interesting passage. Says a lot about Jonathan's leadership. I mean, lack of Saul's leadership, and also Jonathan and the kind of man that he was, and so on. Just a couple of things here about this real quick. Let's get to just some application. God uses the one who confesses their sin. This is not about being sinless. David will commit adultery. He'll commit murder. David will commit some other sins. So it's not about you have to be sinless to be used by God. But it does mean that how we respond to our sin. Why is it important, especially if leaders don't take responsibility for their actions, and if they don't lead by example when it comes to God's commandments and God's word? And why is that important? If the leaders don't what? Take the commands. If the leaders don't repent and lead by example, if the leaders don't follow God like they need to, what will this do to the people?
I don't think you expect people to follow.
No. That's right. Yeah. I mean, and elders, it says, they're to be above reproach, and what that means is blameless. Some of the what it means is their life is consistent. You can't come to them and say, you say this, but you live a different way. They've got to be blameless. They've got to be above reproach. It doesn't mean that they don't have sin, or they don't make mistakes. And certainly that would involve when we do sin, we confess our sins. And so God can use us, but we do have to be willing to how we handle our sin. And then Jonathan's willing to go. That's what I love Jonathan's spirit here. He's willing to go. And then I love his spirit, which is if God will what? If he gives us his favor, strength, we'll have the victory. Joshua would say the same thing, right? Caleb, the battle belongs to the Lord. Well, we're up against a big army. We're up against strong opposition. We're up against fortified cities. We're up against giants, right? Again, what does David himself say? He sees the giant. Israel's going to be scared, right? But what does David say? Hey, God will deliver us. Willing to go, willing to take a stand for God. And that's why we started our series, this year on being faithful. We can't do this on our own. It's by God's help and God's strength, God's might. And so we do it in faith in God. And Jonathan is a great example of that. He's everything that his father's not. His father does not confess sin. His father does not go. His father stays back. His father does not, hides in the supply we saw when he was his moment of being the king. His father does not have great faith. Instead of telling the people, hey, we're going to wait till Samuel comes because God is going to give us the victory and we're going to seek his blessing. And so you just hold the line. Saul didn't do that. He blames even Samuel and makes the sacrifice himself. And so we just see a contrast between Saul and David. Any thoughts, comments on that as we kind of close? Again, we couldn't do chapter 15. It's just going to be too much. We'll have to do that. And chapter 15 will be kind of our last Saul story that will now set us up to talk a little about David as well a little bit later in a few weeks in the summer. But any thoughts on Saul here with this or final? All right. Well, you guys have a great rest of your week, Lord willing, and we'll be watching you from across the pond, across the ocean.
And I will ever praise you. Oh God, you are I will seek you in the morning, and I will learn to walk in your ways. And step by step you'll lead me, and I will follow you all of my days. Oh God, you are my God, and I will ever praise you. Oh God, you are my God, and I will ever praise you. I will seek you in the morning, and I will learn to walk in your ways. And